very, very upset after the Seattle Mariners 3-2 loss in extras at the hands of the Detroit Tigers last night. Will, thank you, by the way, for including that clip in the open of Victor Robles scoring on that Julio Rodriguez RBI single to give the Mariners a 2-0 lead. They did have the lead in that game, then gave it up. And unfortunately now, here, let me just read this text from my dad really quick. I told you we will be out of the playoff hunt by the end of the month. It's happening right now. 2.5 games out already, and it's going to get worse. Yes, the Mariners, after the loss last night to the Tigers with a Houston win, the Mariners now sit 2.5 games out of first place in the AL West. The Rangers, not too far behind them still. 7 games is a bunch, but hey, anything could happen in the last month and a half of the season. We saw the Mariners give up a 10-game lead in, 24 days?
24 games.
24 games, excuse me. So yeah, setting a record for futility. Gosh, my Seattle Mariners. But the Rangers still technically are in the race behind them, but to have faded out in the last couple of weeks. But Seattle really getting down to the wire with, you want to see them winning every series, of essentially getting down to the wire with must-win games. You gave up a ton, earlier in the season that, yeah, you were getting some wins. You were getting weird walk-offs from like a passed ball, that kind of thing, just random stuff. Chaos ball, as the Mariners announcers like to call it, which it's great when it's happening, but it's not sustainable. And then on top of that, the other games where they were losing earlier in the season, you just weren't showing up with the bats at all. And that's actually continued to be a little bit of an issue, it seems, at times here, Will, since the Mariners have tried to turn things around and acquired Randy Arozarena and Justin Turner. Obviously, Julio Rodriguez has come back from injury as well. They're still waiting on J.P. Crawford, but frankly, his presence in the locker room is still there, so I'm not that worried about having him. What I do want to see, though, is Julio being Julio in August and September that he normally is. Those are usually his best career months. I think 391 is his career average in August, and he's hit the most homers ever in any month of his career that he has in September. So this is the time that we're supposed to see this peak ball, but do the Mariners, with their just inconsistency, and I hate to use that word in the world of sports, Will, because it's just, you're paid to be good, so you're not good. You're essentially not good right now as a Seattle hitter more often than not. Do they suck as much as my dad thinks? And I guess ultimately, are they going to fall short of the playoffs because of this lack of consistent hitting?
Well, I think the easy thing for most Mariner fans, right, is you look at what you've seen the last 20 years. And aside from 1 year, you have seen this Mariners team either be absolutely horrific or falter down the stretch. The other thing that goes along with this team is they're on pace for one of the worst averages in the history of MLB baseball. And I understand that batting average is what I'm talking about here, isn't what it used to be, right? It's not the end-all be-all. It's more about on-base percentage and slugging. And of all time is never a good thing. It felt like, too, at the trade deadline, like you made these big moves. You went out and got Turner, who's fantastic, just a professional hitter, finds a way to put the ball in play. And then going and get Arozarena with the emergence of Robles, you're thinking, wow, our outfield now is full of studs once we get Julio back. And it just feels like they find different ways almost to shoot themselves in the foot, almost like that chaos ball that had been going so well for them the last 3 years, where it's just, how did the Mariners find a way to win that game? They had no business winning that game, yet they did. It feels like all of a sudden it's coming back around. I mean, just look at last night. You're up 2-0 in the 8th. You should win that game. You give up a home run in the 8th, and then you don't score a run in the 10th, and you give up a run for Detroit. Detroit is not a good ball club. Right now, they're second to last in the AL Central. The AL Central, it's not that good of a division. I mean, yeah, Cleveland's doing fantastic right now, but the Twins and the Kansas City Royals, I feel like they're thriving off of being in the same division as Detroit and as Chicago, right? They're in the same division as historically the worst team ever in the Chicago White Sox. The Chicago White Sox, we are in the middle of August. They are 7 games away from having 100 losses on the year. In August. It's an insane number. So some of it is like other teams get bolstered by who they play, but when the Mariners get a chance to beat up on these cellar-dwelling teams. They just don't. They got swept, what, a week, 2 weeks ago against Detroit?
Mm-hmm.
They're looking a sweep
Yeah,
dead in the
ago.
eyes right now. When you get swept by Detroit, those teams don't usually make the playoffs. When you lose, and you lose horrifically in multiple series to a team that really they're big-time sellers, they aren't going to be a playoff team, and they're not going to be a playoff team anytime soon. That leads me to believe that this isn't a playoff team either.
Yeah, it's frustrating when you see essentially a team that's now, I mean, you're in danger of getting swept by the Tigers, so that's 3 games. You're already looking at a sweep of the Angels, a 3-game sweep, and then they lost 3 out of 4, I think, a couple weeks before that to the Angels. And these are,
They're like 2-14 or 2-12 against the Angels in Detroit.
Joe Adele has owned the Seattle Mariners
It's
this year. It's been
so
bad. It's almost
bad.
disgusting actually
So
how
bad.
well he hits when he's at T-Mobile Park. It's pretty crazy. But overall, my point is, when you look at this offense just showing up part of the time and getting those clutch hits, I mean, the on-base percentage for some of these guys is good. They walk, Mitch Garver, thankfully not really getting at bats. But then I still wonder about how Scott Service is managing his team, because Justin Turner, as you just talked about, being brought in to stabilize the lineup, help the locker room, really good veteran presence. He didn't play yesterday, and I'm pretty sure he got a day off on Sunday as well. It's not like they have a season of games with him. They've basically got 60 games, and the fact that you're sitting him twice in 3 days, I mean, you can DH him. You need that bat in the lineup. There's a reason that because you weren't in on Vladdy Guerrero Jr., you tried to go get, somebody veteran savvy that was available to you at a decent price. Justin Turner fit that bill, and he is much better than almost every other hitter you've got in the lineup as far as just being a pro goes and how to work the count and situational hitting. So it just doesn't make sense to me that we're still seeing that. And overall, with the offensive issues, man, this team is exciting. They're young. They've got the pieces, Will, but I am not convinced that Scott Service, and there is a lot of argument out there that managers don't really affect the game nowadays, which I would say more often than not they don't. They basically put the lineup together, help the locker room vibe, manage that, and communicate with the front office essentially. But they do have in-game situations to choose, and they have different things that they have to make a decision on. And there will be points where you look back at this season, Will, that Scott Service's decision-making, as well as this offense, has put them in this position to suck.
Yeah, no, I mean, right now, just I pulled up their averages. Your leading average for the Mariners is Justin Turner and Julio.
Yep.
Like, those are your best 2 hit for average guys. Everyone else is bad. You're at 263. Then you go into the home run numbers. Cal Raleigh's at 20 or 21, whatever he is.
Oh, no. He's
Sorry,
at like
26.
25 for 6
26.
now.
So 25, 26.
Set a new career high for RBIs already.
No one else is even in the high teens.
Nope.
You look at stolen base numbers. You look at any measurable metric when it comes to offensive output. It's not good. Even like Robles and Rosarena, guys that, you picked Robles off after the Nats got rid of him and you traded for a Rosarena, and I know he's having a down year, but when you go and you look at even guys who seem to be doing better, when you look at their numbers with runners in scoring position, they still have issues where they falter, right? And so it just seems like that timely hitting where you might have had those bad averages, you might have had those bad games where you would get blown out and then you won a bunch of games by 1 run in the 9th or 1 run in the 10th. The law of averages eventually comes back around, and it's coming back around to hurt you because you just don't have timely hitting anymore. And part of the reason you don't have timely hitting is because you don't have enough guys on base.
That's fair. And you talk about the law of averages. One guy that they also acquired at the deadline, Jimmy Garcia, he was actually, and he's been nails for the Mariners since he was acquired, he was actually the one that gave up those 2 earned runs to give Detroit the chance to get to extra innings and actually get the win. So, and what are you going to do? I mean, he's the guy that you acquired to be your best reliever, but he's not going to be perfect. And if your best guy comes in and he gives up a couple of runs, I do think you kind of just got to go, okay, next up, we're going to try to get this tomorrow. And maybe if you look at this series in a vacuum, that's kind of what you can label it as, is just kind of, well, whatever. This stuff has happened. We lost. It is what it is. We expect to win when we put Jimmy Garcia on the mound in the 7th and the 8th inning. So I'm going to keep doing that. And then a 15-1 loss before that. I mean, that happens. It sucks to get your ass beat like that, but sometimes you got to take your lickings. And I think George Kirby ended up giving up what, like 13 hits and 11 runs and 3 2/3. That's like a month's worth of runs for him. It just doesn't happen. So in a vacuum, this series maybe can be written off as just kind of whatever. But at the end of the season, it's just too important, and these losses mean too much. So will the Mariners make the playoffs? I mean, I hope, but I'm not sure at this point. And my dad's out on them. He thinks that they suck and that they were out like 2 weeks ago. So there you go. Hopefully they can turn it around. Hopefully they can actually get their next series. They do have one more game to wrap it up today in Detroit. Do you see who's taking the mound for that one, Will?
Yeah, it's Bryce Miller,
Miller.
he's taken on, I have it.
Faedo, I think is his name.
Faedo, yeah. So the Mariners are favored, but I learned something the other day when I was doing one of the gambling shows. Bryce Miller splits, home versus road.
Oh, a lot of the pitchers have great home splits right now.
And very bad road splits, specifically Bryce. That being said, they need this one. He needs to come up big. Plus, he could get his 10th win on the year.
So that'd be huge. Yeah,
reason for him to come out and be throwing hard.